Again. Thank you, Daniel. I think we broke at slide 4, so we'll just recommence from that point. And Sinead will bring you back in again. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an aerial view of the proposed site, which shows the site location plan outlined in red, and the part to be developed is to the southeast of the site. Next slide, please. So that's a site location plan outlining the site in red as per the plan pack. Next slide, please. So that shows the site in proximity in relation to the zoning of the Craigavon area plan, and as outlined within the report, it's white land, unzoned land within the development limit of Craigavon urban area. Next slide, please. That's a proposed site layout showing where the layout is and the open space provision and the access on the Kilvergan Road. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are a selection of proposed house types that's submitted with the planning application. And you can see the majority of them are 2 stories, some hipped, some pitched, and there are some chalet bungalows as well mixed throughout. This is proposed garage, garden, stores, boundary and entrance details. That's all been provided. So brick and rail and detail along the front, where any of the rear amenity spaces are in relation to roads, public roads, is going to be a screen wall and hedging. And any sort of small retaining fixture will have soft screening on the inside just to soften it. And that's the attached garages as well. Next slide, please. This just shows sections through the site. There are sections through each dwelling. As you can see, it drops to the south, so approximately 10 metres across the entire length of the site, and the separation distance of each unit is enhanced where the separation or where the site slopes. So that shows proposed landscape, and so it's going to be a tree-lined avenue in through it. You can see the open space provision provided is also going to be planted with benches, etc. as well, being provided internally. Where the exposed gable walls, etc. is going to be soft landscape, and there's also going to be a landscape buffer around the periphery of the site to distinguish between the development limit and the urban area and the rural area. So that shows the private streets determination. If you can recall, one of the objections are that relation to access into the lands to the north, and this shows that the lands are going to be determined right up to that point. Next slide, please. That's a close-up of the access way, which shows the footpath along the site frontage. And these are some photographs of the site. So that just shows the context of Laurel Mount and the adjacent buildings on the farm, which is all within the LPPA. And that's a close-up of Laurel Mount. You probably recall it brought a few months ago to the committee, but it's an unlisted building. That building's not listed. And that just shows, looking back towards the site, the entrance to Tannickmore Gardens is in front of you here, and the access will bring you down to that. Next slide, please. So that just shows 2 and 4 Laurel Mount meadows at the minute, and the footpath will go along the front of that entrance as well, along that hedgerow. Those are the outbuildings at number 41 Kilvergan Road, and which there's going to be a wall in front of those to provide the screening. And that just shows the access into development, and where the green areas there, that's going to be also planted trees to provide a tree-lined avenue into it. Those are the existing dwellings that are approved already off Kilvergan Lane. This will tie into that there and provide access for them out onto Kilvergan Road. And that just shows a site from the rear looking towards the front. So you can see the drop in levels gradually towards the rear boundary. It starts to fall away. And that just shows another photo from the access way looking towards the development limit and where the footpath is going to go. And that just is another photograph looking the other direction towards Tannickmore Garden entrance. Thank you, members.
Yeah, thank you, Sinead. We do have a number of people in attendance tonight who have speaking rights, and they're available for questions and clarification purposes as the debate continues. And that's Richard Alexander, the applicant, Gavin Smith from Clyde Shanks, the agent, Glyn Owen, the architect, and also by Zoom, Chris O'Carroll from the Roads Network Capacity Consultancy, RPS. So you're all very welcome. And if questions arise, well, I can bring you in, there's no problem. So we'll proceed then to the debate phase. Members, have we any questions or queries for our officers? Councillor McAlinden.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and yes, thanks Sinead for that report. Yes, look, Sinead, and it's maybe a question for Chris as well. Given the location, Kilbergan Road, it's a heavily used road at present, with many HGV journeys and vehicles on a regular basis. It's close proximity to the local primary school, local church, and especially Tannenmore Gardens across the road. Is there any plans for a traffic calming on that road, or especially a crossing over those over the Tannenmore Gardens, etc.? And I know there's a footpath along the front of it, but I'd be concerned that with the volume of houses and the volume of footfall, I would be concerned if there's no traffic calming measures in place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McAlinden. Sinead, if you want to pick up on some of.
Yeah, well, the application has been accompanied by the transport statement and reports, and the surveys have been carried out, and the road is going to be widened to allow for a 4.5 metre by 75 metre splays. There also is a 2 metre footpath along the front of the site, which will tie in opposite where you can cross over to the Tannenmore Gardens on the opposite side of the road. So that is going to be provided. There also is provisions to allow there in the future, if needs be, for any right turning lane as well. In consultation with the DFI roads, we're content that the visibility space and the access onto that is fit to accommodate these number of dwellings proposed.
Okay, Councillor McAlinden. Yep.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that, man, again, and thanks, Sinead. Yes, I understand that, but Sinead, I'm still concerned about the traffic, the amount of the volume of traffic and the speed, and I mentioned again the traffic calming measures, and maybe that's a condition maybe we can look at later on. Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder, Chris, in terms of your perspective on it from the roads on the network itself, have you any particular comments in relation to Councillor McAlinden's concerns around the volume of traffic and the potential issues that might arise for existing residents and in the event of an approval for future residents of the development?
I suppose I would say that the traffic it is existing traffic movements there. Again, we are heading right through the 6 metres as well, so we're getting through the each direction. Plus, it's only a resident, there is a little bit of footpath down through. But in terms of the existing traffic, I suppose in terms of movements and HGVs, that type of thing, that's currently there. But we are coming in the speed limit as well off the Kilbergan Road. So speeds and cars and traffic volume should be slowing down as we come in the speed limit.
Okay, and what is the speed limit there? Just out of interest, I'm not completely familiar with the area in terms of the exact speed limits, but is it a 30 or a 40?
Yeah, just before the crossing there at Tannenmore Gardens, it's a 30-mile speed down there. Just never put obviously our pedestrian crossing point just up above that. We're taking them through Tannenmore Gardens. So the speed limit is 30 miles per hour at that point.
You're just proving a wee bit hard to make out there, Chris. Just I think it's very echoey in your room. Not sure if you need to maybe sit a bit closer to the mic or something. It's just echoes playing a wee bit of havoc with us here. Just
okay. No, the speed limit as you win is 30 miles per hour, just as you come up Kilbergan Road, just below the access in the development.
Okay. Councillor McAlinden, are you content with that?
I'm still concerned, Chair. It's an issue I'm heavily lobbied on, is the speed and the traffic jam. And there's a number of children would use that road on a daily basis, going to the Tannenmore Gardens and to the local primary school. And the residents have raised concerns with me about the volume of traffic and the speed of traffic. And I've seen it too often. These developments are finished, and then later on, there's a survey done, and then traffic calming measures are brought in. So I'm just wondering, can they be incorporated now within the development? Thank you.
Okay, I suppose maybe we might go to Sinead. Is that something that's a consideration, I suppose, in terms of planning perspective, or sort of 6s and 7s, isn't it? It's something that Transport NI or Infrastructure Department would have specified through their initial consultation anyway, but maybe you can clarify that for.
Yes, it's something I've looked at, released even 30 miles speed limit. This is a 30-mile-per-hour road coming up to this site where you have to obey, you know, outside the application process. And this application has been designed to 2038, so to take into account of future development. So all developments also have to not account for the existing traffic, they have to future-proof it. So the statement has been designed up to the year 2038 to, I suppose, to future-proof it for that 10-year plus time period. So they've done all that they are required to do under this application, to be fair, and it's been signed off by DFI roads. I know we have them back 2 or 3 times in regards to quite a lot of stuff in relation to this application. So it's been thoroughly looked at as regards to the need for any further mitigation work other than what's proposed at this present time. And we can't reasonably ask for anything else other than what's proposed now.
Okay. Councillor Savage.
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in there. Sinead, I'm just for clarity, just in terms of this Kilvergan Lane, it seems some of the objections are around possible access to it going forward. And I think the report makes it clear that, you know, that's not going to be the case. Can you just confirm that after this development's completed, access onto the Kilvergan Lane and any lands off it, there shouldn't be any issues for people going forward for future development there? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Sinead.
Yes, Councillor, I think the objections were 2 separate ones and 2 different, suppose, potential issues. But Kilvergan Road or Kilvergan Lane, I suppose, just to clarify, this application site doesn't bound or provide access onto Kilvergan Lane, and therefore it's not impacted by this development at all. There are other lands within the development limit which are facing on to Kilvergan Lane, and that's obviously an assessment that will be that will have to be looked at in the future. But notwithstanding that, this application has been designed to allow for ongoing access through this development if needed be for those other development lands. So the lands aren't landlocked and they're provided to an adoptable standard. We've met all of those and we've clarified that with the objectors.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Sinead. And Sinead, just a couple of points of clarification. You mentioned a right turning lane. Is there a right turning lane as part of this proposal? It's not clear. If it's not, just tell me why there isn't one, you know, in relation to this scale of development. And the final clarification is the red line. The red line at the moment goes beyond the development that's being proposed. Is there a reason for that? Because obviously that's rural land and it's not zoned. So is that the actual, is there like a master plan or something missing that this area is being considered for future development or what? Or why is the red line going so, rather than it be blue, if you know what I mean, as opposed, because obviously, you know, it can sort of muddy the water in relation to where the site boundary is. So those are my 2 points of clarification. If you haven't, Sinead, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sinead.
Yeah, in regards to the first one, there is no right hand or right turning lane provided. This was fully considered at the design stage of this particular application, and roads are confirmed that the provision has been retained in the verge if needed be in the future. But for this particular development, given the numbers proposed, one is not required. As regards to the red line, yes, the red line is bigger than proposed layout is. As regards to this application, but the site layout clearly shows structured planting that provides a distinction between the urban area and the rural area. Sometimes the developer or the architect makes the red line a slightly larger because of potential infrastructure required for drainage maybe now, and that's just to allow that to be processed within the current application, but it's not the requirement of this. So unless maybe Mr. McGill from Clyde Shanks can clarify otherwise, that was my understanding, potentially was to future-proof if they needed any development outside the application site, for example, for drainage proposals potentially. I'm unsure.
Yeah, anyone? Yeah, do you want to bring that clarification? Thank you.
Hi, Gavin Smith here from Clyde Shanks. Sinead's correct. The red line was extended purposely just for any necessary infrastructure reasons, so drainage being one of them. But other than that, I mean, the site layout plan clearly denotes and illustrates the full extent of the proposed development with the buffer planting around the edge.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. You happy enough, Councillor Nicholson? Yeah. Okay. Any other queries or questions, members? I don't have any other lights on. Councillor Toman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would be off the same vein of Councillor McAlinden and Councillor Nicholson in terms of the traffic on the road and with the provision of the right-hand turning lane. Sinead, you did say that there was a potential down the line, but I certainly feel with this development that that in terms of the traffic on the roads, it would benefit from a right-hand turning lane at present. And if we do proceed with this application, is it a possibility to add that as a condition? Also, with the provision of a right-hand turning lane, it would allow space for pedestrian crossing, so that would solve some of the issues where Councillor McAlinden raised as well. So just some clarity on that, and that would be just for me. Yeah, thank you.
Sinead, I suppose you'd be best placed for responding on that issue specifically.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. The irony is that the mission of the right turning lane actually assists in reducing vehicle speeds, both from entering and exiting the development and the village, because with cars stopped to turn naturally slows down the traffic. So by having the right turning lane actually assists in people not adhering to the speed limit and that particular thing. So that has been looked at in the round, and the number of vehicles for this here particular development doesn't meet the threshold that the right-hand turn lane would be required. So that has all been looked at in the round. I suppose we'd be reluctant to add a condition that a right turn lane would be required, because it would go at odds with the report that has been submitted and thoroughly assessed in regards to the robustness of those. Any condition has to be reasonable and necessary, and it would be the opinion of office at this particular time that such a condition wouldn't be reasonable or necessary. I'm afraid.
Okay, Councillor Toman.
Yeah, thanks for letting me in. Sinead, can just pipe for clarity, what is the threshold for a right-hand turn lane for developments? Is it the amount of traffic on the road, or is it in terms of the number of homes within the proposed development? Thank you.
Thanks, Sinead.
Yeah, it's a mixture of the scale of development, the number of vehicles, the surveys, the type of load, etc. So there's a number of points. I know we do have a consultant in who maybe could clarify that a wee bit better than I have, but I suppose we take the lead from DFI roads and that, but there's no statutory threshold. There used to be set down, but you sort of look at the traffic statement and the number of cars and things like that. It's not simply X amount of units means X amount of right turn lanes, etc. If you want me to have that better clarified, Councillor Toman by the roads consultant in the room.
Yeah, okay. Chris, if you don't mind, if you wanted to give us your interpretation of that in terms of the thresholds or what triggers the requirement for a right turn lane, and if you can sort of sit as close to the mic as you can too.
Chair, perhaps I can answer this question if you don't mind. I am Conor.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop you. It's just you don't have speaking rights, and I know that might sound like dancing on the head of a pin, but we have a very strict protocol and planning, and it sort of restricts me in bringing other people in who haven't requested speaking rights, because then down the road somebody else could say, well, you let another person in who didn't request it within the time frame. So I know it sounds a bit intensive, but it's just the rules we have to abide by. So Chris, if you could give us your opinion on that.
The discussion around right turn lane was discussed at depth with DFI roads. the consideration of 50 units is where your starting point is. Now, we're kind of just at that point now where it was considered the number for the right turning lane. Now, for us wasn't DFI, the idea was that without right turning lane, it does slow cars down in each direction, allow the person to turn right off the main line. But in terms of threshold, it is the consideration taking at 50 units. That's your kind of starting point. That's what a consideration, so it is in terms of effects.
Okay. Councillor Tolman, are you content with that explanation?
Yeah, content. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other queries specifically for Sinead or those present members? Okay, we'll move into the debate phase then. So I'll take your views on it, members, at this point. You're allowed to express them. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman, and thanks everybody so far. No, look, I think again we've got a very, very detailed and well worked out report in front of us this evening. And everything seems to be I's dotted, T's crossed. I know there's concerns about roads, but I do understand, and it is road services philosophy that in fact a right turn lane would speed up traffic, because if there is, as Sinead said, a standard road where a car is waiting to turn in or come out, it slows traffic down. So I know it mightn't totally satisfy a number of councillors, but that is where road service position is, and they are obviously the statutory body, and they've stated in the report. So realistically, it's a very well worked out development, and again, it's obviously there's a demand for it. We can see there's houses been built all around it. So I think that, you know, obviously as it stands, the recommendation is the correct one. So that's my thoughts, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Nicholson. Anybody else at this point? Okay, I don't see any other lights on, so we'll move straight into the decision phase, members. I'll take proposals at this point. Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, Chairman. No surprise, as I said before. I think it's a very detailed report. Everything seems to be detailed. That isn't detailed is conditioned, and I propose we accept the recommendation in front of us, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a proposal there from Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, Chair, I'll second the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Any other proposals, members? I'm not seeing any lights or indications. So on that basis, we'll abide by the recommendation of the planner. And Sinead, thanks for that. We'll move then. We're going to Appendix 5 next, members, and thanks, guys, for attending. Appendix 5, so it's application LA08 2022-075OF. And Sinead is also presenting this one. So Sinead, when you're ready, you can commence. We also have Hayley Wilson from Clyde Shanks, who has speaking rights for clarification purposes only. But Sinead, you can start anytime.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The applications for 2 extensions to an existing industrial unit, Class B3, General Industrial, associated yard, compound, parking, relocation of existing infrastructure and ancillary site works. And the reason the application is before the Planning Committee is because it's a major application. Officers have taken, the members have read the report in full, and as such, this is a synopsis only. The application site is located within the Development Limited Craigavon urban area on land zoned as existing industrial land as identified by the Craigavon area plan. Officers are of the opinion that the application to extend an existing general industrial use in principle is acceptable. The extensions measure 2,729 square metres and 9,624 square metres respectively. Officers are of the opinion that proposed extensions and associated yard area will not have an unacceptable adverse visual impact on the surrounding settlement limits, and the retention of mature surrounding vegetation will ensure the building satisfactorily visually integrates into the immediate area. With respect to impacts on interests of acknowledged importance, including noise and amenity, a noise impact assessment was carried out in order to assess potential impacts on the local residential receptors. Officers are satisfied that given the layout, construction type and separation distance involved in the construction operations phase of this development, it would not give rise to any unacceptable adverse impact on the amenity of residential properties in relation to noise or odour. The application was accompanied by a transport assessment form, which included a transport impact statement, which robustly assessed the traffic flow by two methods, local data and tricks. Following consultation with DFI Roads, who are the competent authority in this matter and who have raised no objection to the proposal, officers are content that the proposal will not raise any undue impacts on highway safety. In respect of parking provision and having regard to the number of workers, operating patterns and location, the new parking spaces provided as part of this proposal will meet demands at peak times and as such is considered acceptable. The appropriate drainage reports have been submitted in which Rivers Agency have no reason to object, which includes the Article 161 approval from Northern Ireland Water. As regards to ecology, officers following consultation with the National Environment Division are content that this proposal is not likely to harm any European or nationally protected species in accordance with the provisions of the SPPS and PPS2. The proposal was accompanied by an environmental site assessment, a generic risk assessment to determine the existence or otherwise of contamination within the site and the risks that they may pose and whether they may require any remedial conditions. The assessment concluded that no unacceptable risks have been identified from ground or groundwater contamination within the site. The Hyster Yale plant is in the process of updating all its products to a new range of transportive, modular and scalable models, and this represents a major investment in the current Craigavon base. And on the information provided, officers are recommending approval. Take me through the presentation. Yeah, next slide, please, Hillary. So that just shows location of the site within the general areas within the current industrial estate. And next slide, please. So that's an aerial view of the proposed site. So the factory at the current time is a substantial size, and these extensions is going there to the northwest and to the southeast. Next slide, please. That just shows the site location plan with the red line outline, or the site outlined in red, which encompasses the entire site. And that just shows location of the site in regards to the Craigavon area plan. If you can see the arrow, so it's a light pink area, which is land zoned for existing industrial use. That shows the proposed site layout. So to the left-hand side, to the dark green, you can see that's the extension, which actually is added on to a previous extension this planning committee approved in February of 2019, and then to the southeast, two arrows. Next slide, please. Just shows all the elevations in context. There will be no higher than the existing factory, and will blend in with existing materials and roof design. And that just shows the layout of the proposed extension, which that particular extension is over 9,624 square meters. So it's significant size, but in comparison to the rest of the factory, it is ancillary. Next slide, please. That just shows the elevations to the southeast corner, which also meets in with the same ridge height and ties in with the materials as already on the site. And that it just shows that wraps around the elevation treatment there, and that measures 2,729 square meters of floor space. This just shows looking towards it in the southeast corner where they're going to be added on to the particular development. So it's just going to be an add-on to the existing factory. And that just shows the road is going to be realigned slightly to the east side here, but no trees or anything is going to be impacted as part of this development. That just shows looking back, you can see the industrial units to the west of the site, which is at slightly higher level. And that just shows looking towards the corner of the site, which is also going to be added on. That's the previous extension that was approved in 2019. And that just shows looking back up again towards the corner. And that just shows the site from looking down. So the existing security fence around the site from that particular area to the back will be moved and set around the site again, and the security fence will be brought back to enclose the entire site. And that just shows a close-up for the road that's going to be then realigned just to the left-hand side there, where you can see it started. It's going to be realigned around the factory so you can drive right round. That's just actually from Google Images, but it shows it from the motorway. And that's the site there. You can sort of see in the distance the top of the factory. So it's going to be no higher than that. And we have conditioned that vegetation along that boundary of the motorway is to be retained. Thank you, members.
Okay, thanks, Sinead. Members, we any questions or clarification required from Sinead or from Hayley Wilson? Any queries, members? Okay. I think it's a fairly straightforward application in many respects. No, everybody seems quite content if I'm reading the room correctly. So I'm happy to go to the debate phase and you can give me your views on it. The lights are coming on now. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like you said, thanks, Sinead, for the report. Again, very detailed. It's all there in front of us. Said I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And I suppose, Sinead, obviously these two large extensions, and I noticed that the car parking doesn't seem to have increased greatly. Just give me more detail on that of what the rationale is. I see it in the report. It talks about shift patterns and things, but you got to be more detailed that just to sort of give us a wee bit more sort of understanding, because obviously we get these in front of us all the time, and car parking provision's a big thing. And obviously, I just confirm that there is provision for other modes of traffic to get to and to the business. So thanks, Sinead.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. As you know, the parking standards basically assume that the car parking space requirement increase is a direct correlation with footprint. Basically, it goes with the size of the development. In this particular circumstances, this they need basically a lot more room to carry out their to do a new model. So beforehand was high volume, low mix model, and that's now changed from the early 1990s where there are 4 different products. Now there's 20 different products on show. So it's basically, it dictates a bigger floor space, but that does automatically reflect that the need for the staff increases to that. So that's why they have sort of looked at how many traffic is coming in and out, how many people either in regards to hourly paid or full time. And in light of that, all the figures have been provided. So they've provided 111 spaces, actually more than what they have, and that would more than meet the demand at peak time at this particular site. So while the floor space is extensive, it's basically because of the number of products and the type of products that they are actually built in this particular site.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sinead, for that full report. It certainly is an investment going forward that Hyster Yale are prepared to move forward with this type of investment and to expand their company. And it's a well-grounded company within the Craigavon area, and it's good to see. It's a good news story again, economically and for work-wise as well. So there's no objections in any way by the statutory agencies or otherwise. So I think this is a great application, a great proposal going forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thanks very much, Chair. And just reiterate what Alderman Anderson said there. You know, this is a very good news story. Sinead, it was a comprehensive report, I think. All our questions were answered in it, so we didn't have to ask you any questions. The conditions make sense in terms of the location as well. And also, one benefit is that it will allow Hexter Yale to phase out their old LPG and diesel products, and as it says in the report, bring in more innovative means of production, and also this will be good for the environment. So I think the report is very good, and it's a win-win for the borough as a whole. So I think it's something we should be looking at accepting the recommendation. Chair, thank you.
Okay, members, don't have any other lights on or hands up online, so we'll move to the decision phase. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you again, Chair. Yes, comments have already been made, and I would certainly be happy to propose that we accept the recommendation, officer's recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Alderman Anderson. Councillor McAlinden.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, look, it's a good news story for the area, and I'm happy enough to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And sorry, Haley, we didn't need to ask you any questions, so that's a signal of a good application, obviously. So well done. But thank you, members. We will move on to the next application. We're going to revert back then to the order as per your minute. So we move then back to number 1. And Nicola is going to bring this one in LA 2021 0083F. When you're ready, Nicola. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full planning application which seeks permission to change the use of a dwelling to a house of multiple occupation, HMO. The recommendation is to approve. There are 3 objections from 3 addresses and a petition of 103 signatures. There are no objections from statutory consultees, and DFI roads and environmental health have no concerns. The definition of a HMO is set out in the planning report. There is no direct planning policy, and consideration is through the SPPS. The main determining issues are design, character, amenity, and car parking and road safety, as set out in the planning report. In terms of the principle of development, the site is in Thomas Street, Portadown. Thomas Street is approximately 700 metres long, and the first 430 metres is within Portadown town centre and is a mix of retail, commercial and residential. The town centre ends at the junction with Hanover Street and Meadow Lane, and the application site is within the town centre boundary. Thomas Street has at present 9 registered HMOs. There are currently 2 HMO applications, this application and the one which is following this application, both being presented today, and they're due to the number of objectors. I've set out the details within my report and my presentation. As advised in the planning report, the HMO NI Act in 2016, enacted in 2019, now requires that all HMOs have to have planning in place prior to registration. And the main issues are in terms of design, character and amenity. There are no physical changes to the property. The property is still residential. I have no evidence of recent amenity complaints on HMOs, and it's been confirmed by Belfast City Council HMO team and the council's environmental health team. In terms of parking and roads, there's no changes to the parking standard for the proposal. Site is located within the town centre boundary, and it's 400 metres from High Street, Portadown, so it's very accessible. A parking survey has been carried out and has been considered by both officers and DFI roads. Officers have also visited Thomas Street on a number of occasions to look at the parking provision and are satisfied that there is parking availability within the immediate area as defined and identified within the parking survey. And I'll just go through the presentation. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the site is just adjacent to the town centre boundary or the town centre. Next slide, please. That's an aerial view of the site. Next slide, please. This is the site location plan, and there's a block plan there. Next slide, please. This is just some details in regards to the length of Thomas Street and just the approved, the current, and anything on the register, current applications and anything on the register. This is the existing elevations and plans. There are no changes actually to the elevations, just the plans. So next slide then is the proposed elevations and plans. Next slide then shows a view to the site. It's a 3-story property. Next slide, please. This is then a rear view of the site. Next slide, please. This is the view to the site then on Thomas Street, just looking towards the town centre. Next slide, please. This is the view actually coming from the town centre then down towards the site. Next slide, please. This is a view just, yes, again, looking towards the town centre, but it's immediately in front of the building. Next slide, please. A view opposite of the properties. Next slide, please. This is just some details of the parking analysis submitted. Next slide, please. Just some of the streets that have been identified. And I think the next slide is just the analysis then of the details. I think that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Sinead. Members, we'll move to the questions for Nicola. So if we have any, now's the time to raise them, members. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Nicola, for that report. Yes, there's a number of things here. Probably we're seeing a number of these coming forward in the Thomas Street area, and there's 3 addresses have put in their objections, and there's 103 or something on the list as well. I am aware that there is a deep sense of that Thomas Street, which once was considered and seen as a complete residential, family-orientated street, is fast becoming very changed in its setup. Say this is, I think I picked up the figures there, the 11th HMO. I think I asked questions before. When is a street that was formerly or seen as completely family-orientated residential changing to HMOs? How many and what percentage of these changes should we as a planning committee approve? Now, I'm saying this also realising that we probably have to be seen to be treating each planning application fairly on what has went before. But there are, say, deep concerns in relation to this. There's one other thing in the report I would want to ask. I think I picked up that the waste management plan would be asked for before this property is housed. And maybe Nicola or someone could give me some idea of how those HMOs, this one that we're debating now and the others, how the waste management plan for bins and such like is operated, and what is acceptable, and who is responsible, how much this council's involved in their waste disposal. So I would like to see what the opinion of that would be. Also, we talk about the road service. Yes, they do say, and they probably tick boxes here, but Thomas Street is a very busy street. I note in the report was taken at different times and probably observed at other times. But with on-street parking and such like, obviously the more people who are residing in that street, obviously there's a good chance that there'll be more vehicles parking. And I know this off-street parking, but it all adds to a complete change of Thomas Street as we know it today and knew it in years past. So maybe if we know about the environmental stuff first, the waste and stuff and such likes, I am aware that in past years there was I know it says in the report that their environmental health didn't have much to note it, but I do know that there was a lot of environmental issues there regarding waste and such in past years. So I'll leave it there now to hear maybe other comments on maybe Nicola could let me know about the waste. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Sinead, or Nicola, maybe you want to pick up some of the broad points there that Alderman Anderson is.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. In terms of waste, I mean, there is a condition provided that a management plan for waste has to be submitted and agreed in writing with ourselves. However, waste really is a license, and it is a licensing issue. It would have to be provided as well to Belfast in terms of getting a HMO license to run the premises. So that would be provided anyway, but we would ask for a copy of that to be submitted to us and details of that then to be confirmed so that we would find that acceptable in planning terms as well. You'd mentioned about how many, and there is policy within Belfast City Council for HMOs, particularly for student accommodation. I think is probably the main issue and concern there, but we don't have a HMO policy, and I can only apply the relevant policies then in regards to what that is for anywhere really outside of Belfast. And we have to consider the criteria which I had set out within the report, and I've gone through in terms of the character and the amenity, and we've looked at that and considered that in this case it meets the requirements of those policies and considerations. In terms of parking, the parking standard is just the same as residential, so there is no change, and I can only go by the standards that are required within the policy set out as well. So thus the proposal has been presented today and put forward with a recommendation to approve. In this case, I mean, these two applications, the one which went previously last year, it was outside of the town centre boundary, it was further down Thomas Street. Both these applications are within the town centre boundary, so they would be more inclined for consideration as acceptable under policies which look at, trying to provide accommodation really close to the town centre. And there's more facilities really in relation to that, because most people, there's the potential that most people then would walk to the amenities adjacent.
Okay. Thanks, Nicola. Alderman Anderson, you want back in?
Yes, Chair, and thanks, Nicola. Yeah, I understand that the previous one was outside the town boundary and these two are within. But when taken in the round to anybody looking at it, it's all Thomas Street, and the residents living there is over the years on Thomas Street from the main street down to the Armagh Bridge. I still find it difficult that parking will not become an issue, because the more residents you have, if they all decide to have a motor vehicle or whatsoever, Thomas Street is very congested at times with on-street parking down each side. Depending what time of the day you maybe go to look at it and survey it, it would give different answers, but there are issues there. As regards to the waste management plan, Nicola, who's responsible for lifting or collecting that waste? Does our council, or is this done by the ones that operate the HMO, and they would be responsible for the removal of waste, or do we play a part in that? Just for clarification, thank you.
Yeah, Nicola.
I'm not 100% sure about who would collect the waste. I would assume that it's the council, but I actually couldn't confirm that. I'm not entirely sure.
On this one, Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to elaborate a little bit on what Nicholas said there in relation to Alderman Anderson's point. Yeah, look, I think in relation to the waste management plan, Alderman would require details of how and where the refuge would be stored to be submitted, and also details of how it's going to be disposed of. Now, in this instance, what I would expect to see is that they would say, here's the location. It'll be stored obviously in refuse bins, which would be left on the pavement like anyone else to be collected by the council's refuse team. But I mean, that's for the applicant to explain in the details of a waste management plan, which would be required to be submitted under the terms of the condition. So I hope that sheds a bit of light on that for you. It might be worth just picking up as well on an earlier point around what you mentioned before about previous approvals and Thomas Street itself being a residential street. And I think there's an important distinction between this application and previous approvals on Thomas Street, in that this one is actually in a town centre location, so it's not a predominantly residential area in terms of its character. And I think that is an important distinction to be made here. And in a town centre, I think it's set out in the report quite well, actually. The strategic planning policy statement supports a diversity of uses in the town centre, and actually that includes residential development. So this would fall into that category. So it's just to highlight that important distinction between previous approvals elsewhere on Thomas Street and this one, which is inside the town centre boundary. I hope that just helps to deal with a couple of points that were raised. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mitri.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nicola, for the report that you've outlined for us. Nicola, can I just ask if you can elaborate on which concerns are most commonly being articulated within the objections? I note that there's a number, maybe 7 or 8 main issues raised, but obviously, given that there's quite a considerable number of objections within the petition, can I just get a little bit of elaboration as to was there one particular issue noted within the title of the petition, or did the petition dwell on all of the issues raised? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitri. The petition actually was originally submitted to the application. It was actually originally submitted to the application which came in front of members last year for further down Thomas Street. And the petition, it was mainly directed at it, but it was asked to be copied into the other 2 HMO applications which were currently active at that time. So it has automatically then been copied into these 2 files as well. And the issues around it were probably more centred with the concerns further down the street in terms of the character and the impact in terms of litter and whatever that were raised. But let me just go through it. I think parking was a concern as well, because the streets further down are a bit narrower as well, and there's more residents immediately off them, more households immediately off them. So there were concerns then about parking. So it does cover most of the issues which are outlined within the consideration of the report, though, and I've gone through them then just to detail what they are.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman, and thanks, Nicola and Damon, for your report. And I do remember the debate we had the last time, and it was a very detailed debate, and it did come down to the whole thing that we don't have a actual planning policy for HMOs within this area. And I think I asked at the time, well, obviously, should we not have one, and we should try and get one, and that still remains my position. It's very much about balance in in one sense, we're trying to encourage, less dereliction, reuse of existing buildings, getting footfall into our city centres, but we still don't want to erode, has been alluded to, the character of the area. And again, you go from a family home to a potential of 12 people living in one unit, with 3 wheelie bins in the backyard to facilitate the waste that those 12 people could potentially produce. So it is a concern of mine. I'm very much a supporter of city centre living, but it's a very difficult one, in relation to that. And I suppose my question to Nicola is, regarding the car parking analysis, I think it's obviously it's been taken at first thing in the morning and in the evening, and people would say that potentially that's when people are their cars are parked there. And I know the area very well, and I'm surprised at the numbers, I have to say. I really am surprised. So my question is that, in relation to that survey, is that taken as gospel, or do you do your own survey, on that basis? And do you go out at different times during the day rather than just the morning and the evening? Because I do think one of the 2 big problems within these type of developments within our town centres and even the outskirts is car parking and amenity. And it sort of centres around that debate. And I know we don't have policy, but again, I think as a committee, we have to be mindful and make sure that, we're not sort of, as has been said before, if we've got a street full of these, how do we deal with, that number of cars and that number of bins and whatever within the vicinity? And I have real problems. I don't see how you can compare this to a family house. To me, they're totally different. But unfortunately, I go back to my point with no policy. So, Nicola, my question is in relation to the car parking strategy, what sort of analysis was done within the department, i.e. roads, rather than just the agent going forward? So, thank you.
Nicola.
Thank you. Roads did request that we consider asking for a parking survey, and a parking survey then was requested. In this case, I've been out to the site. I've actually been out at all times of day, in the evenings as well, to have a look at the site myself to see whether there is available car parking. I've been out on 7 different occasions. I've been out when the schools are stopping. I've been out during the day. I've been out during term time and outside of term time, because this application's been in a while. So, and I have seen available parking available at all times when I've been out around that area. So, so there is availability, but yes, I mean, this is what we're looking at currently. If there were future applications and more intensification, then maybe these would be developed and there would be less parking availability, and that's something that we'd look at as things develop. But as it stands at the minute, the details that are here and provided in front of me, I have found to be acceptable. I've found to meet what I've seen myself on the ground. So it's very difficult to say. And there's photographs attached actually to the next presentation. For the next one, there's actually photographs of those times of day, so you can actually see it. And that was the same last year. Whenever I presented an application, there were photographs of the street having empty spaces. Now, this one doesn't specifically show that, but I have seen that there is stuff available. And so it's not just the fact that you're taking, figures into account and accepting those. Hopefully that answers your question.
Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report, Nicola. No, I just noticed and I took part in the last debate when these HMOs came up in Thomas Street, and it is a sad fact that not just in Portadown, a lot of our streets are getting narrower and narrower with just one into one lane, with cars parked on both sides, with families getting bigger, more children living at home, such things like that. But my question would be around fire safety in around these HMOs, Nicola. I noticed in the rear view picture there was a fire escape next door. Is there to be one to this property, or the HMOs, a 3-story, require fire escape, or do they have to submit a fire report and safety report in round?
Thanks, Nick.
That's actually a licensing issue as well. It's not necessarily a planning issue. As it stands at the minute, they haven't submitted anything for fire escape. If they do, they would have to submit details to us for that as a separate proposal. We have no details of that, but they would have to submit a licensing application, involves submitting a number of additional pieces of information, and that's processed separately and dealt with separately. And then the same, I mean, if there are complaints in regards to how the site is being managed and serviced, there is provision within licensing to make complaints so that the license is revoked. So those are all separate issues which can be dealt with, again, through licensing and not through planning.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Nicola. But would, as I say, in the rear picture of, the property, there is a fire escape next door, albeit there's a door partly up the stairs on it, but would this property need a fire escape?
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. There is no proposal for a fire escape, and I don't know what the legislation requires in terms of fire provision. So that's a separate issue. That's not a planning issue. So it doesn't form part of this application. I can only go by the details that are submitted, and it's not part of this application.
Sorry.
I'll repeat that. So I would assume that it wouldn't be required.
Damien, maybe something to add on this one?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to add to what Nicola was saying there, Councillor Duffy, it's likely to be a matter that would fall under the remit of building control, actually, fire safety. So in terms of building regulations approval, I think it's more a matter for them rather than for planning. Because obviously there can be other regulations that a development would have to comply with as part as well as planning. So I think it would fall under building regs approval. Maybe just picking up as well, if I can, going back to some of the concerns that have been raised by members, I think it's worth highlighting the point that the Planning Appeals Commission, whenever they assess applications of this type, the main considerations tend to be around amenity and parking. And as Nicola has pointed out, around the parking situation, the availability for on-street car parking is there. The surveys have shown that. There's been no objection from DFI roads, and I think the PAC would place a lot of weight on that. And nor has there been any objection from Environmental Health Department on grounds of noise in terms of amenity. Again, something the PAC might put attach weight to as well. And the reason I'm highlighting this is in case members are considering overturning the recommendation. I did go to the PAC. It's highlighting for your attention the sorts of issues that they would focus on, and just bringing those to your attention. And I suppose it's worth just mentioning as well, members, if we can't accommodate a development of this type within a town centre location without causing demonstrable harm, where can it go? Because a town centre, it's set out in strategic planning policy statement. It's about accommodating a diversity of uses, including residential. So in principle, the type of development is acceptable in a town centre. The parking situation seems to be acceptable according to the surveys, and no objection from DFI roads, and there's no objection from environmental health. So subject to the conditions around waste management, officers are of the view that this is acceptable, notwithstanding the concerns that you have, members, and obviously we have to give regard to those. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Damien. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Nicola, just a very quick question, just for my own knowledge more than anything. In terms of the house at the minute, it's a 5-bedroom property. Could the landlord, as it stands, put 12 people in there at the minute as tenants and not declared as a HMO, or is there any requirement in relation to HMOs about the number of people in a property? You know, as it stands at the minute, could he put 12 people in there anyway? Just thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Savage, for your query. Only if it was a family. So yes, a large family could occupy that property, and there would be no restrictions in terms of numbers. Whereas a HMO, through the licensing as well, will have to specify the number of people using the property. So that would be specified. Now we wouldn't. I have given the maximum number, but given that it's double beds or whatever within the space, but it's not necessarily going to be that number. That would have to be clarified through the application then for licensing.
Okay, don't see any other lights on or hands up, members, so we'll move into the, Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would like to propose that we go into committee that I seek some legal opinion.
Members, Councillor Moodry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would just like to second that recommendation from Alderman Anderson.
Members, we've had a proposal and seconder to go into legal advice. So I have to read the following statement and then we will ask for the public feed to be paused. So ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'm going to move all those members of the public and councillors who are attending the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee via Zoom to the Zoom waiting room. Those using a dial-in service will be placed on hold, and anyone in attendance in the chamber will be asked to leave the room to enable the committee to obtain legal advice from its legal advisor. Any member of the committee who has spoken as a supporter or objector to the application under consideration will also be asked to leave the room. The advice provided will relate only to legal matters. No discussion of the merits of the application now before us will take place until the public element of the meeting resumes and you will have been moved back into the meeting or taken off hold. Any legal advice provided is confidential, and all members of the committee who remain are obliged to preserve that confidentiality. An official will readmit those required now to leave the room, and those on Zoom will be readmitted to the meeting once the provision of legal advice has been concluded. So if we could have the live feed. Thank you. Okay, members, you're welcome back. All those that are joining online. We will continue with our questions after receiving that legal advice. And if we've had our questions answered, then we'll move into the debate and ultimately a decision. So, members, I'm in your hands on this one. Councillor Savage.
Thanks very much, Chair. And you're right, we've had a good debate, we've had legal advice for it. I do think we all do have concerns with HMOs, you know, and the increasing number of them. However, I think that we've been told there's a policy in place that this application can be assessed against. We've been told that it does meet the criteria. And I think on the basis of that we have our hands tied on that, you know, as it stands at the minute, that the officer's recommendation is one that we maybe reluctantly have to accept, but I can't see any grounds for refusal myself personally. So that's just where I stand, Chair, at the minute. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Chairman, I have a question, if that's okay. I know we moved into debate.
Take a question.
The question is, I suppose I was sort of reason I missed the sort of the cusp between sort of question debate was I was going on the internet there. There is a criteria for car parking space per bed sits, and it's you know, for unassigned it's 1.25 per bed sit. So if you've got 6 bed sits, that's 7.5 spaces, which you round up to 8. So there's potentially 8 car parking spaces required in this development. So the question is whether or not that's one development, and we've got another one coming after this, and there's others in the area. So you add all that up, it soon turns into 30, 40 car parking spaces very, very quickly. And I just want to make that point. The other point is within the car parking standards, there's a requirement for cycle spaces. Now, is that taken into consideration in this development? That if somebody has got a bicycle, because we do encourage sustainable travel, and say, for example, you've got 12 persons in this building, where do they provide car parking space or cycle spaces? We've talked about car parking, and now I'm leading it on to another dimension, which is sustainable travel, which is bicycle spaces. And I suppose my point is that I totally understand the debate that's happened here this evening in relation to these, because these things, we need to get a hold of this. Like I understand what's been said, the legal advice and all that, and whatever, and we have a policy, and totally agree, but these things aren't being dealt with properly. And it's because we don't have a specific policy. And when I say specific policy, I don't mean the SPPS. I mean a policy in the same we have for rural housing. You know, we have a separate policy for rural housing. You know, we don't rely on the SPPS by itself to make a decision on rural housing. So this is where my frustration is. And I do agree with Councillor Savage. Tonight, our hands are tied, because if this went to an appeal, it would be overturned, because there is a policy there. But in my eyes, in my opinion, that policy is not suitable for what to deal with this. But the bottom line is, you know, the question I wanted to ask, Chairman, if you would allow me, is do applications like this take into account the requirement for bicycle spaces? Because you do any apartment development now at the minute, there has to be a certain number of cycle spaces. So I don't see why the difference should be made between an apartment scheme and a HMO. So that's my question. Thanks, Chair.
And you've got your spoken late there, but I'll take it anyway. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson, for your question. This isn't a bed sit, and that's a separate consideration. That's not the same relevant consideration as a HMO, and there is no requirement. In the case of these 2 applications in front of you, though, there are rear yards available, but we haven't had to require them to demonstrate that.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. Councillor McAlinden.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And just a comment, really. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about the HMOs, and suppose there's many of those buildings. These buildings are sitting derelict for years. Not only are they an eyesore, but they're a health and safety concern. And here we have developers coming in to develop them, and they're occupied by probably some of our lowest paid workers in the borough, who are contributing vitally to our local economy. So I think it's important that we look at this very carefully. The people, we heard a lot of talk about car parking spaces. Many of the people living in those houses can't afford a car, probably can't even afford a bike. So it's vital we look at this very carefully. And that's just the comment I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McAlinden. Any other comments, members, before we move into the decision phase? Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I take a lot of points on board, but what I do ask, and no one can give me an answer, and the state question is, how many HMOs would be allowed into Thomas Street before we as a committee could say enough is enough? Now, do we wait till the whole of Thomas Street, all the residential dwellings are changed into HMOs, because we don't have a policy ourselves? We have this other policy which says, oh, we turn this down tonight. So everyone coming forward, developers or those out there today who hear this debate, if they have a chance of getting an HMO in Thomas Street, the first thing they should be doing is getting into the plan with the planning application to get these pushed through. But this can't go on. The bottom line is you can't let HMOs overtake a whole street. It has been family orientated for decades. And that's where I'm coming from here. There has to be, we have a responsibility as a plan committee to ensure that everyone is treated fairly in Thomas Street or any street in this borough, that they're treated fairly, and we say it as that. But this keeps coming up. They are month after month, we see more coming in. And there are issues with the car parking, with the waste management. These are actual issues out there. I know it, other members know it. So I think our hands is being tied, and I understand a lot of it. But then, can we even say tonight that in light of this debate, we cannot take any more applications for HMOs to such times as this fully looked at, or this council, as a broad council, carries out a survey and carries out a report and brings back a report to us to let us know the whole setup in Thomas Street is, reference HMOs, residential, people living in them, who they are and what they are. And we see a full picture here. All we're seeing now is applications approved for HMOs. And quite literally, it's between Belfast City Council and the planning piece. We've really no powers here tonight. We're basically looking at, our hands are tied. We've no say in this. And there's things went on there about Belfast City Council in relation to fire reports and things that were raised. Do we see the licensing conditions coming back from Belfast City Council? And if we are unhappy with them, we can say, no, we're not happy with that. This seems to be taken out of our hands in relation to what we're doing here. And it's ironic that we started off the whole debate about this council and the way, and then we brought forward figures, how well we're getting on with offered recommendations on the way this council has behaved over the years. But I think there's something lacking here. Something really needs to be looked at. And I know it's been thrown out before that there's a new development plan being looked at, and maybe that would be the time to do something. But I'm happy that would be a time. But what do we do in the meantime? Do we get the new plan? I do have those concerns. I want them noted. Thank you.
Yeah, points well made. Councillor Lavery.
I wouldn't say Councillor or Alderman Anderson's points well made. In fact, the reason I'm speaking is regarding to some concerns with regards to comments Alderman Anderson just made with regarding to potential residents of these developments. I think he said who they are and what they are. Now, I don't know the context of those comments. So Alderman Anderson might like to clarify them. But Chair, I am concerned that some of these comments might end up in a legal case against council. I must confirm that I will be taking my decision once we make the decision phase solely on planning arguments presented to planning officers and so on, as set out in the report. But I have some concerns about some of the comments that are being made, and I would ask members to reflect. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
Not surprising you get something like that from Councillor Lavery. When I said in relation to who they are, I'm talking about developers. These are developers or entrepreneurs, call them what you like, who are moving from residential dwellings to HMOs. And that clarifies the situation. I'm not talking about who's the inhabitants are. I'm talking about the developers or who are planning. Doesn't cause me any concern who lives anywhere in this borough, in any home. Everyone's entitled to a home and everyone's entitled to the best facility they can get. And I hope that clarifies for Councillor Armagh, but he's good at nitpicking some to get a headline. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, we've give this a fairly good debate. So I'm keen to, and I know from Alderman Anderson's point, he did make a couple of, a number of points there in terms of, and they're valid, and that's where my comment was made in terms of the comments being well made. I fully understood what he meant. And I think we've had this debate on the people come up with these, connotations associated with it that aren't simply there at all. So based on the fact, I think, Damien himself has said, we have the policy that we refer back to, but we also have, planners' ability to make decisions based on demonstrable harm. So, that's where it's at, where I see it, you know what I mean? And that's not the takeaway from the fact we all know that there's been, in various parts of the borough, there's issues with, waste, and there's issues with, all sorts of issues, and those are brought through to council and dealt with via the appropriate channels. And it does point glaringly to the fact that we don't have that policy, and our area plan, has been delayed, with COVID and everything else. So, that is gathering pace in that regard. And I think that's where our focus probably needs to be in terms of, how our policies are created and what they respond to and how they, take in the views of people living there. I mean, a petition of 100 people signing it is fairly significant. I mean, if it was in any other, area or in terms of, or not any other area, it was in any other sphere of application, it would be, council would be concerned in terms of that level of objection. So it's clear that there are people there who aren't comfortable with HMOs generally, and I think that's replicated, even in Belfast as well, when you look into some of the debates there also. So it's mirrored, right across the areas where HMOs are a feature. And it's a fair point as to how many you permit, and it's probably not good enough that you're allowing them to be permitted simply because of a lack of policy. So that's a weak point, I think, in this council's behalf. I think it is somewhere where we need to really start focusing on, because it shouldn't be an open-ended. We don't allow houses in the countryside open-ended. Like, you think of a house on a farm, one every 10 years. That's not one every 2 years. It's one every 10 years. And there's a reason behind that in terms of preserving the integrity of the rural countryside. It's not, you can make, I made, lots of arguments previously, even before the creation of this committee, about, people not being able to build in the country. And I had very firm views on that at the time, but I realize now a policy is important. So, and that's what dictates and shapes our countryside. And that's the same for our urban centres and our suburban centres as well, our areas. So it's something that definitely needs to focus on. But anyway, I've talked too long on that. Members, we'll move, or sorry, Damien. Sorry, go ahead.
Chair, thank you for that. No, I just look, I'm conscious of the way the discussion's going, and maybe just to try and assist members, and because I know it's a difficult one. I can see the challenges for members here. But it's just to make it clear that, look, if members are of the view here that there's demonstrable harm resulting from this development proposal, there are reasonable that's a reasonable ground in which to refuse the application. And I just wanted to make that clear to you. If you are of that opinion, and notwithstanding the recommendation that's been put before you, if that is your opinion, you have reasons to refuse the proposal. Alternatively, members may wish to defer the application for further information based on some of the points that have been raised tonight. And you could highlight those for officers, things that you would wish us to go away and look at and bring back to you if you would prefer to go down that route. And that's just to present other options in addition to the recommendation that's before you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mitry.
Thank you, Chair. Just another separate issue that, pertaining to Appendix 1, and, to quote the section titled Number of HMOs in this location and the character, it says, as set out in the body of this report, officers do not consider the proposed development will alter the character of this part of the town centre. And I mean, I guess the obvious question there is, at what stage does the character of this, particular site become altered? And that, without a specific policy, there is no, there's no answer to that. So I guess the question I have is there any potential for bringing in a specific policy on this? And I think that would certainly help members going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mitry. As it stands at the minute, I have to consider it under the relevant policies, and there is no other policy. The area plan still under consideration. So, as an officer, I have to consider what the relevant policies are and what current policies there are for me to consider.
Okay, members. I'd like to get this one drawn to conclusion if possible. So we will move now into the decision phase. I'm open to proposals, members. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the responses from Damien, he came forward with a couple we could refuse this application on the grounds of the demonstrable harm to the area, which many people would see it as that. The other suggestion he made was that we could defer this to allow a more in-depth investigation and survey to be carried out around this whole area and to see when it is okay to keep, how many of these do we allow, basically coming back to a percentage of the other houses and inhabitants around that whole particular area and side streets. So I would wish to make a proposal that we do defer this to give the officers time, and I would hope to take a good amount of time to get a good in-depth survey done here, and to maybe, if we even talk to residents living there, what harm the SC is taking. It's not just us, but there is change, and a great change taking place in Thomasley. And I think it's only right that we as a committee give the residents of that street a say in what's coming forward, and then we could look at it again. So I propose that this be deferred, this application, till we get further information compiled by the officer team. Thank you.
Okay, members, we have a proposal. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. I propose to accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Based on what we've heard tonight, I will second Councillor Lavery's proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Mitry.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second the proposal put forward by Alderman Anderson to defer until such time that members have more information.
Okay, thank you. Just 1 second. Sorry, Councillor Savage. Yeah.
there's two proposals on the floor. And for the second one, there could Damien and Alderman Anderson actually just clarify what additional information we're going to be gathering at this stage. I don't think there's going to be anything else that would maybe change the minds, but I'd like to know what further information is going to be relevant to the decision-making process. I think from what we've heard from legal advice and from the planning officer, that there's nothing else that's going to change this unless there's a change in policy. So I don't think we should defer for the sake of deferring it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, maybe Damien, if you could outline the potential avenues for the gathering of additional information on this particular query based on Alderman Anderson and Councillor Moodry's points.
Chair, I'm happy to try and assist as far as I can. I mean, I'm just picking up on some of the concerns that were raised by members. I heard, for example, there were issues raised around fire safety. If you want clarification on something like that, officers can provide it. If you wanted further information on the number of these types of development in the immediate area, we can look to get that if that is an issue. If that is, I can't put words in members' mouths, but if that is what you require, if you require further information around the requirement, for example, which was raised by Councillor Nicholson for cycle provision, I think Nicola addressed it, but we can look at that again, and if there's anything else, or if that isn't correct, if there's anything else, make officers aware of it, and we can go off and follow that up and bring back a report in due course. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Damien. I think that the notes being taken by the minute takers this evening would bring forward a lot of concerns that I and others have here. So I think we should feed that all into any survey, and there still needs more work, I believe, in traffic, the traffic in that particular street and things like that. A fuller sort of report on it. Just as I say, on the ground, you maybe hear more from residents than we would see in a report. And I would hope that we could get a full sort of overview of the whole situation. But the thing that mainly concerns me is when or what number, because we're lacking somewhere here that we are sitting as a planning committee and we don't even know how many particular houses of a particular type, like HMOs, are going to be allowed. And as I said before, do you turn the whole of Thomas Street into HMOs? So maybe in that report coming back, I would like to see some guidance as to what we can do or not do. If our hands are tied, so be it. But I think we're failing here some in a great way that we cannot decide the makeup of a street because we don't have something in place. We need to get that changed. We need to get it changed quickly. And as my colleague, Councillor Moodry, said, we need to get that report forward. And I would like to think there's movement on pretty quickly before we see maybe an avalanche of HMOs coming in for Thomas Street and other streets. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. I just suppose in terms of the wording of that, and if you could be, as specific as you can be, I've picked up on concerns around traffic and also fire safety. Is that right? You spoke about, I suppose we've dealt with the fact that we don't have a policy. I'm not sure that's going to be dealt with in the time frame, afforded by the next available opportunity to should your proposal be carried in that instance, that we would have a policy in place. So I'm not sure that that's going to be enough in terms of a deferral pending a policy creation. I think that's a significant bit of work. But I'm just trying to tease out in terms of traffic and fire safety. Could you elaborate a bit more in terms of you've talked about a survey? Is that, how do you see that, or what's your view in terms of that survey in terms of what it's achieving?
Well, there's sorry, Chair. There's a number of other issues. The one I began, I think one of the ones I began with was the waste disposal and how that's going and who's responsible. I don't think we really got an answer. We don't know tonight who is responsible. Is it this council or is it these HMOs being run like some sort of a business. If that was the case, disposal would come down, I would think, to that business. Should it not be their responsibility and everything? I am well aware of waste problems in that street over many, many years. And there's other members here in this chamber, I'm sure, were as well. So it's really the issues that were identified by various members tonight. But I would like to get to a place where we could get some advice. We're sitting here, and I'll say it again, we're sitting here and we don't even know. All I can assume out of this debate today is that every HMO coming forward here will be approved. That's the way it is. And if it's causing so much concerns that we're getting a number of objectors, even though it was a petition signed some time ago, but they're the same people still having the same problems. So we need to get to pretty quickly as possible, get to a place where we do have a policy or guidance or something to tell us the next one that appears here. Here's what's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman and Damien wants to come back in here.
Chair, thanks. No, look, I just to try and assist really and to help matters along. Maybe if I can just make a note of what I picked up from there, Alderman Anderson, and so we're all clear on what it is we're being asked to look at. So I think you mentioned the issue around how waste will be disposed of, and how or where it'll be stored and disposed of. There's the issue, I think, around the impact on the character of Thomas Street, having regard to the number of housing multiple occupations that are already there. Fire safety, need for cycle provision, is that one of them? Is that one that we've been asked to look at though? Is that okay? Is it just those? Because I have those four down. Is that correct? Is that help members in terms of just clarifying what it is? Do we need to look at that again, given the information that's been before us tonight? The members require further information on traffic. And what type of information though are we been asked to look at? Just.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to traffic in Thomas Street, I'm, like many others here, be up and down that street many, many times during the week. And, you know, there's a school down there as well, that the congestion at times, depending on what time you go, it's difficult to get moving. So there's two sides, there's on-street parking. So the way these are coming forward, it looks as if roads will be happy enough to accept the fact is that these HMOs are not going to cause any more vehicle movements or by the occupants. What if they do? What if 12 occupants of an HMO all decide to buy a car? Where do they park it? They can use off-street car parking. That's fine, but they can't always use it. So it has also been mentioned here, I don't know who it was, asked about Councillor Nicholson in relation to the number of parking spaces there should be for other types of buildings, you know. So I think it has to be looked at again. You probably get the same answer from road service you usually do. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, just to be clear, Alderman Anderson, I think you're asking us just to review the accuracy of the information that we reported on this evening. Is that right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duffy.
Yes, just on this report, if this happens the fall, you know, or is carried that, you know, we don't accept it, will the next one be debated? Because I had a question for the next one. What I would say for asking it now. And it was in.
I suppose if it's a query specifically on an application, you have to wait till that application is considered, and we haven't decided this in any shape or form. So we're currently still in the quizzing stages here in terms of what these proposals that are before us mean, with particular reference to Alderman Anderson's and Councillor McGree's proposals. So we can't really foretell that at this stage, Councillor Duffy, but we will have to wait and see in that regard. But you couldn't. I'd be uncomfortable with you raising another application prior to it being, tabled. If you understand what I'm saying, you would have to curtail your remarks to this application in particular. So, but I'll leave that up to yourself in terms of making that judgment. Councillor Toman.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've given us a good discussion, and I think Damien has assisted Councillor Anderson, with the wording of his deferral. But I think what Councillor Anderson is trying to say is that he is looking for a change in policy in terms of the HMOs before you make a decision. But we have to be very careful. We are making a decision here tonight on what's put before us. We cannot defer an application to allow space or time for a policy to be created. So, Chair, I would just ask if we can conclude this item, because we need to be very careful with if we are going down the route to defer, that a policy is not created in that interim period. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear you, Councillor Toman. I suppose I did reiterate, after Alderman Anderson's, remarks that, that isn't going to be a possibility in terms of, the creation of a policy in such a short period of time. We are dealing with the situation as it is now, and what Alderman Anderson has and Councillor Moody have requested is, clarification around, 4 or 5 different points and further information associated with that. So that's very different, in my opinion, as opposed to the actual creation of a policy. So it's just to put that, firmly on the record. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I agree with Councillor Toman's previous comments there. This is deteriorating into a bit of a farce. I'd say if you were to ask Alderman Anderson 3 more times what his proposal is, you'd probably get 3 different answers. Seem to be taking a scattergun approach here with the proposal written by the head of planning. All the information I think we need to make a decision on the current policies has been provided to us. Nicholas talked length about it, and there's a substantive reporting issue, and we've dealt with HMOs before. So I think we need to take this decision based on plan and policy that we're required to have committee members, and not take into account any other bits and pieces, which I'm concerned are being taken into account, which may put council into a difficult legal situation. So I'd content that we now move to a vote on this issue, and ask members maybe support the proposal to approve the application. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lavery. I suppose, been on this committee from its commencement. There's been numerous deferrals based on the fact, that various members, maybe not all of them, because we all bring our own views after hearing all the evidence associated with any particular application. So we've had numerous deferrals. Some have been in agreement with some members, some have been in disagreement with some members. That has always been articulated. And Alderman Anderson and Councillor Moodry have articulated their views tonight. I'm in the chair. I don't carry a particular view in terms of the whether Alderman Anderson should or shouldn't, and I don't carry a view in terms of whether Councillor Lavery, you feel the committee should be bringing this to a conclusion or not. I'm here to chair it. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to let everybody have their say, as I have been doing and will continue to do. So there's no, in my opinion, any legal threat from someone asking for more information, and I'm quite sure at some point in the future you may well be one of those councillors asking for more information on a particular application, which is completely your right and function to do as an elected representative. And that right is, of course, extended to everyone in this committee, including Alderman Anderson and Councillor Moodry. So with that being the case, we have a proposal, and we'll have actually 2 proposals, one to accept the recommendation and one to defer for further information. Based on the fact that Councillor Lavery, your proposal was seconded first by Councillor Savage, I'm going to move to a vote on that, but I see Nicola's light is on at this stage.
I just wanted to clarify a point that was raised by Councillor Alderman Anderson earlier, just to advise members that I did actually meet the residents, the objectors for this application. I met them personally, and I did speak to them about the application before I came to the recommendation, before I came to that sort of stage. So I did meet them and I did discuss those issues with them. I know he mentioned about meeting some of the people that had concerns. In this case, I did offer that opportunity and I did meet them in person. So it's just to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. Just 1 second, I get the appropriate sheet. Okay, members, so we're going ahead with the first proposal, which is to accept the recommendation of the planning officer, Nicola Craney, on this particular application. So, well, as usual, be calling out each person's name, and that will then signify for you to tell me what your view is. So, Alderman Anderson, if you could give me your view on this one, thank you.
No, Chair.
Alderman Barr. Alderman Barr, are you still on? Your showing is on. Okay, when we come back to Alderman Barr, Alderman Twyble.
Can I ask you to tell me again the question, please?
This is the proposal to accept the recommendation of the planning official, that we approve this application.
Well, then I'll abstain.
Okay, and myself, I will be against the application. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor McAlinden.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor McGill.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor McNally, I don't think is on. Councillor Mutri.
No, Chair.
Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Savage.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Tolman.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Wilson.
No, Chair.
Councillor Lavery.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, members, just going to top this up. We'll be back with. Oh, sorry, Alderman Barr, did he come back in? Okay, so we'll consider him not voting. Okay, members, so we've had that verified. So the result of the vote is 7 voting in favour of the officer recommendation and 4 voting against, with 1 abstention. So with that, That being the case, the application is approved and the other proposal falls. So members, we will conclude on that application and we will move to, sorry, 1 second. Okay, members, you'll maybe be glad to hear the tea is ready. The break is coming. It's imminent. So we'll maybe just postpone at this stage and we'll resume after we get our refreshments. Thank you. Stop the live feed as well. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to appendix number 2, which is also one of Nicola's. So it's LA 08 2021 0640F. And Nicola, when you're ready, take your time and you can commence when you're ready to go.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full planning application which seeks permission to change the use from a dwelling to a house of multiple occupation. It's for 5-bedroom house. And it's for 99 Thomas Street. The recommendation is to approve, and there are 12 objections from 8 addresses and a petition with 103 signatures. There's no objections from the statutory consultees, including DFI Roads or Environmental Health. And the definition of the HMO is set out in the planning report. There's no direct planning policy, and consideration is through the SPPS. The main determining issues are design, character, amenity, and car parking with road safety, as set out in the planning report. In terms of the principle of development, the site is in Thomas Street, and Thomas Street, it's really the same as previously. It's 700 metres long. The first 430 metres is within the town centre. It's a mix of retail, commercial and residential. The town centre ends at the junction of Hanover Street and Meadow Lane, and this application again is within the town centre boundary. Thomas Street at present has 9 registered HMOs. There are 2 current applications which are being determined, including the previous one. Today, and they're being presented due to the number of objectors in the petition. I have all of the details and the consideration set out within the report and my presentation. Just so members are advised that the HMO NI Act of 2016, which was enacted in 2019, now requires all new HMOs to have planning in place prior to registration, and that's in regards to licensing. The main issues are in terms of design, character and amenity, that there's no physical changes to the property. The property is still residential. And again, we've no evidence of amenity complaints from Belfast City Council HMO team or our environmental health team within the council. In terms of parking and roads, there's no change to the parking standard for the proposal. It's located within the town centre boundary and it's within 400 metres of High Street, Portadown, so it's very accessible. A parking survey has been carried out and has been considered by both DFI Roads and officers. And officers have also visited Thomas Street for the assessment on 7 occasions at different times of the day, and are satisfied the parking availability within the immediate area is identified within the parking survey. And I'll just go through the presentation. Next slide, please. So the site is on Thomas Street. It's actually immediately facing the site that we just did previously. Next slide, please. So it's number 99, and on one side is the fire station, and on the other then is the residential row it's attached to. Next slide, please. That's the site location plan. Next slide, please. This is the map then showing the approved HMOs, the current applications, and any HMOs that are on the register. Next slide, please. That's the existing plans and elevations. And that's the proposed plans. Next slide, please. This is a view of the front of the property. It's a 2-storey house on Thomas Street. That's a view then along that row, just to see the remaining properties on that terrace. That's the back of the site. There's a right-of-way just up along the back, and that's the right-of-way. And that's then a view of Thomas Street then, looking down then looking up towards the town centre. And you can see the site, and just behind it then is the fire station. Next slide, please. That's a view then just in the middle of the road. It just gives you a view right up into the town centre. Next slide, please. I should actually have mentioned that last slide actually was right on the town centre boundary. So that's where the town centre completes. And that's, these are views then. That's the view from the town centre going towards the site. There was a parking analysis submitted. This was a more detailed analysis. Next slide, please. There were photographs then of the parking spaces provided, and then details in terms of the percentages. Again, parking analysis showing the location and the parking availability, AM and PM, and in different days. I think there's a third one as well. It was done for 3 days, and the details are all provided. And that completes my presentation. Thank you.
You, Nicola? Okay, members, any questions for Nicola? Councillor Duffy?
Yes, thank you, Nicola. Thanks for your report. I noticed in previous applications for HMOs that had, what I can remember, and especially the last one there, had mentioned kitchen, dining and sitting areas, all had communal areas. This one doesn't mention a communal area, just mentions a kitchen. Is that, would it have to have it, or?
Nicola?
There isn't a communal area provided in this proposal, you're correct. But each of these all have their own individual bathrooms attached to each of the bedrooms. So I think there's the advantage then in providing that within the units, but it's not a requirement, no.
Okay, any other queries, members? For Nicola specifically? I'm in your hands, members. If you have any other queries you want to raise, now's the time to raise them. If not, we will go to the debate phase and you can give me your views on it. I think we've exhausted ourselves in the previous one by the sounds of it. So no views. Okay. We'll move then straight to the decision phase. We'll need some type of decision. Councillor Duffy.
I'll propose the officer's recommendation.
Okay, we have a proposal then to accept the officer's recommendation. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, it's a bit like Groundhog Day, Chair. I think we had the debate in the last one, and I'm happy to second the recommendation, obviously. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. In light of that on what went before, Chair, could I ask that my opposition to this be recorded? Thank you.
Okay, that's noted. I suppose based on that and based on previous decisions, is that 1 second just to sorry about that, members. Just a couple of wee points of clarity. I know, Councillor Nicholson, you'd stated that based on the previous discussion, but if you could just clarify, and just based on what I've been told, we can't, it's just from a technical perspective, we can't really refer back to that. We'll have to treat it within its own merits I know there's a lot of similarities, but just I suppose for the record, if you could just clarify those remarks, it'll just keep us all tickety-boo, as the saying goes.
I think, Chair, yeah, I appreciate that. And I suppose I was sort of referring to it as a bit like Groundhog Day, you know, and but look, as far as the recommendation is in front of us tonight, I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other proposals, members, on the chair or on the floor, should I say? Okay, members, if that being the case, that application is approved. We'll move to our last one, which is Appendix 3, application LA 08 2021 1346F. And Kyle is presenting on this one. So Kyle, when you're ready, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This plan application seeks full planning permission for the demolition and replacement of St. Peter's Primary School with a new 5-classroom primary school with associated vehicle access, car parking and grass play areas. The application is before you this evening as it is a major planning application. Officers have taken it, members have read the report and the addendum in full, and as such this is a synopsis only. The application site is located partially within the settlement development limits of College Land and partially outside of development limits. The site is comprised predominantly of the site of the existing school within the settlement limits. However, there is an extension to the existing site area to the southeast to provide a grass play area, which is located outside of the settlement development limit. The application site is not located on its own land. In this instance, officers raised no concerns regarding the principle of development. Regarding policy SMT1 of the Armagh Area Plan 2004, alteration number 1, the proposed development is considered to contribute to a sustainable and quality environment, be in keeping with the size and character of the existing settlement, not lead individually or cumulatively to a loss of amenity, and comply with all other relevant plan policies. A sequential assessment was not deemed necessary, as paragraph 6.271 of the SPPS requires this for future main town centre uses, and the use in the site is established. However, notwithstanding the conclusion reached above, it should be noted that the settlement of College Land does not have a defined town centre. Furthermore, the school's catchment, going on its first criterion for school places, does not extend into any other town centre. The TAF also demonstrates that pupils who attend the school are mainly from the local area, and some pupils walk to the existing school. As such, the site is a sequentially preferable site. As noted above, the site extends to the southeast to accommodate a grass play area. This section of the site would be outside of settlement development limits. Paragraph 6.199 of the SPPS recognises that open space, sport and outdoor recreation is important to society now and in the future, and everyone, particularly children, older people and people with disabilities, should have easy access to open space and the opportunity to participate in sport and outdoor recreation activity, or simply enjoy and have some contact with nature. Policy CTI1 identifies a case whereby plan permission will be granted for non-residential development in the countryside, namely a necessary community facility to serve the local rural population. The justification and amplification text of policy CTI1 highlights rural development concern must be balanced against the need to sustain rural communities. The school site within the settlement limits is constrained by its size and the need to provide a building which provides sufficient space for the local population. Due to the increased size of the car park proposed, following the erection of the proposed development, insufficient space would be available on the existing site for use as a grass play area. Housing applications on adjacent lands within the settlement limits to the north and south of the site have made it more difficult for the school to obtain the required land within the settlement limit. The current site can only accommodate the new school building, and the adjacent lands are seen as a natural extension to the school premises to allow the development of a grass play area. Accordingly, there is a clear overriding reason as to why this aspect of the proposal is essential and cannot be wholly located within the settlement limit of College Land, in accordance with policy CTI1 of PPS 21. This extension to the site area is considered to comply with policy OS3 of PPS 8 and therefore policy CTI 1 of PPS 21. The design of the replacement school building is contemporary and will provide 5 classrooms. The building makes use of mono-pitch roofs, slope roofs and flat roofs. Part of the building would be 2-story and the highest ridge height would be 9.4 metres above ground level. As detailed in the report, a range of materials are proposed in this building, including corrugated metal cladding, which would be anthracite in colour, white render, wood cladding and red brick detailing. In terms of the site layout, the existing playgroup would be moved approximately 18.5 metres to the southeast and a new located further east than the existing school buildings. By moving the proposed school building further east, this allows for the creation of a larger car park. A hard play area would be located to the rear of the proposed school building with a soft play area located further east. South and southeast of these play areas, the grass play area is proposed, which would be an extension to the site area. Officers consider the layout of the buildings, scale, form, materials, landscaping, and the spaces within and around them have been designed to be sensitive to the surrounding townscape and landscape and will successfully integrate with the surrounding area. In the opinion of officers and following a balancing exercise, officers are content that the proposal is in compliance with policy CTI 13, CTI 14, and CTI 15 of PPS 21, living places, policy DES 2 of the Planning Strategy for Rural Northern Ireland, and policy OS 3 of PPS 8. Transport assessment form and travel plan have been submitted in support of the application. The proposed access to the development is considered to comply with policy AMP2, PPS 3. Parking arrangements and layout have been considered by DFI Roads and they've raised no objections. Officers note that there is a shortfall of spaces provided for parking from that required by the parking standards document, but members are reminded that there is no intensification proposed in the use of the site or increase of pupil numbers proposed. At present, the site can provide approximately 23 parking spaces internally and externally, and 41 spaces are proposed internally with drop-off facilities. Officers would clarify that the lay-by in the College Sands Road is to be retained and would provide a further 6 spaces to be used as a drop-off zone. The proposed parking arrangements are considered a significant betterment to the existing arrangement and a safer arrangement. The proposal includes the parking provision for 13 bicycles. Based on pupil numbers, guidance would stipulate a requirement for 15 spaces. However, given the location in this small settlement, officers consider the cycle provision to be acceptable. Officers are content that the proposal is in accordance with policies AMP2, AMP7, and AMP8 of PPS 3, DCAN 15, and the parking standards document. A drainage assessment that has been carried out. The drainage assessment states preliminary calculations have been carried out, indicating that approximately 164 cubic meters of attenuation will be required under a Q100 event, including climate change. It is proposed to provide the attenuation via an underground tank within the proposed play areas, with discharge rates restricted using a flow control valve. Schedule 6 application has been submitted to DFI Rivers, requesting permission to discharge stormwater to Canahan drain located east at an attenuated rate of 11.8 litres per second. This has been based upon DFI Rivers Greenfield figure of 10 litres per second per hectare. Finalised drainage assessment has been conditioned, but members will note that the drainage assessment provided has demonstrated that drainage can be suitably handled. Overall, in the flooding and drainage context, officers consider there to be no conflict with the SPPS or the policy provisions of PPS 15 revised. The impact of the development on features of natural and built heritage has been considered. Officers in consultation with competent authorities have not identified any concerns regarding the impact on natural or built heritage that cannot be overcome by the inclusion of conditions. Members are, however, advised that a subsidiary badger set associated with the application site is to be temporarily closed as a means of minimising potentially significant impacts on badgers and their places of refuge as a result of the proposal. The Natural Environment Division raised no objections subject to the inclusion of this condition. The impact on amenity has been considered. Members will note that officers, following consultation with environmental health, have raised no concerns in relation to amenity. No objections have been received regarding this plan application. So overall, officers consider the proposal to comply with the local development plan, policy requirements of the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies. And on that basis, approval is recommended for the reasons outlined in the report and the addendum, and subject to the conditions suggested in the report and the addendum. Okay, so this slide then just shows the location of the site within the general area. So the site's in College Lands, which is southeast of the Moy and Charlemont. The next slide then just shows a closer up image of the location of the site. Next slide then shows an aerial view of the site. And then the next slide just shows a closer up view, so you can see that the main school buildings are predominantly in the west of the site towards the College Lands Road, and the grass play area is to the east of the site. So it's just the site location plan. And then the next slide then shows the site layout plan. So to the west of the site, we have the parking area, and the new school building then is to the east of that, which is set further back than the existing buildings on the site. And then you can see the extended site to the southeast. So these are just the plans, the ground floor plans. So in yellow are the classrooms, and then the first floor plans. Next slide then should show the elevations. So this photograph then shows the site frontage. So you can see there the fans and cars parked up, which is a lay-by which is going to be retained, and there'll be 6 parking spaces there. Next slide then you can see just again the site frontage, but above the blue car is the playgroup on the site, and then above the white car you can see one of the mobile classrooms on the site. This is just the existing entrance to the school. And then the next slide then shows the car park on the site, which provides 16 car park spaces. So you can see here then just from the car park in front of that, the main school building, which is being extended to the front and to the side. And then to the right-hand side of the photograph, you can see another mobile classroom along the roadside. It's just another photograph of the main school building on the site. And then this photograph of the playground, you can see a number of the mobile classrooms on the site. So the next couple of slides are just really a couple of mobile classrooms that are on the site. Yeah, and then that one there is just off the playgroup. So, yeah, so this is the existing grass play area to the rear of the existing site. And then the final slide is the part of the agricultural field that is proposed to be incorporated into the new school site. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Members, any questions for Kyle? Your application. Councillor Nicholson.
Yep. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Kyle, for the report. Kyle, the new boundary is being formed between the school and the field. Will that be like, there's not a lot of detail there, but is there conditions to what that needs to be, and you know, sort of buffer planting and things like that? So just to create that sort of, you know, that rural boundary edge.
Yeah, so in that section of the site, there are a few retaining structures that are required, but over which then it'd be the palisade fence. So there was some planting proposed along it, but we've also included a condition requiring the planting of a hedge along that, just really to soften it for the rural landscape.
Okay, any other queries, members? If not, we'll move into the debate, decision phase. Anyone has any particular views they wish to express? Councillor Nicholson.
No real view, Chair, apart from again another very good report. And I know the area well, and should this be approved tonight, it will be a massive addition, you know, to the education infrastructure in that locality. So, as I say, it's another one of the reports. There was very little you could actually find a question in. So again, well done, Kyle and the team, just for bringing it forward in this form. So, and if you want a recommendation, Chair, you did say, so I'm happy to propose if you wish. So I'm happy to.
Okay, members, Councillor McAlinden.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Kyle, for that substantial report. And suppose, as a rural councillor, and I say how much our own primary school plays a pivotal role within the community, and I've no doubt this new development in College Land will play an important role within the College Land and my community. So look, if Councillor Nicholson is proposing it, I'm happy enough to second it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAlinden. We don't have any other lights on, so I'm fairly content that everyone's in agreement with that. So on that basis, that concludes the applications phase of our meeting, and with there being no further business, I'm able to close up and just have the live feed stopped. Thank you.